Okay, so we're just doing a quick profile. We just played Austrian Nationals here. It was a nice event. Peter and I, we played the same deck list. He made first place, I made third place, I guess, or top four, you could say. And we're just gonna go over the list. And I mean, it's pretty much standard branded Despia at this point, but I think for everyone that's interested in maybe seeing like the in-depth explanations of why you play certain cards or not play them, I guess that's maybe interesting for you. So we start with 3 branded fusion. I mean, nothing to say about 3 Aliber as well, or 3 opening, or maybe this is a bit more controversial, but gold sarcophagus. I mean, I don't know how you felt about this, but I felt we wanted to have an additional starter that would do something on its own. You have the problem of not having a playable hand at all, so you just want to see any card that like does something on its own. So this pretty much equals Aliber, or if you go second, it also equals Fallen of Albers, which can be pretty nice into certain boards. So.
Or it also gets you Albion, which lets you set up the Brandon Red if you like a second. I drew it once, happened to OTK my opponent, but sided it out pretty much every game that wasn't mirror match.
Yeah, I mean, we play 43 cards, so to have this as a card that you can possibly side out is nice, but I don't know, personally it feels a bit weird to side with this deck in general, just because all of the cards in your deck, you really need them to play. And it feels really weird to side something out like this, but I think it is a bit of a controversial pick, because this could be a third tragedy, which was what we were thinking about, but I don't know, I just wanted to have a 1-card starter, I think. Yeah. Then for other Despia monsters, 1 ad libitum, 2 tragedy. We played a lure, but we still only played 2 tragedy. I think that you could possibly think about playing this deck with 45, but we wanted to keep the chances as well as possible to, you know, to just open a playable hand and not, and also see your side cards, I guess.
Nothing to say.
Yeah, all right. And then we played 2 Albion, so we also played 3 Branded in red, so I felt like with this at 2 only makes sense. Obviously you want to search this oftentimes with Lost or with Gold Sarcophagus, as Peter mentioned, but yeah, I don't know, I just felt like this can put Albus in the grave also versus any of the Eldritch, Flunder matchups or whatever. You can put Opening in the grave, which is pretty nice, versus Striker as well, it's pretty nice. So, which actually happened to get in the finals, which is pretty funny. So, yeah, I guess that's pretty neat. Then 3 Albus, I think at this point this has become pretty standard, because if you open this with Poly, you can play around Ash more or less. I mean, you go super minus, but it's the only way for the deck currently to play around, or not around, but to do something if you get ashed at all, because that hand trap really hurts.
True, yeah.
We played 3 Edge Chain, 2 Patchwork, and 2 Poly. So we also built this deck with Gönner, so I want to give a shout out to him, because he had the idea that we only play 2 Patchwork instead of 3. Usually you would think that this is a very good starter, but if you think it through, if you open Imp Chain and you discard it with either Fallen of Albus or Opening, you really only get to resolve 2 Patchworks in that game. So it only makes sense to play this exact ratio. We also thought about playing a ratio of 3 Patchwork and 3 Polymerization, but I guess we just didn't have any space, and also Poly can be a bit weird in the hand.
Also, it happens like if you resolve more than 1 Patchwork and you basically ran out of monsters to fuse from your hand or grave that also float, the Poly basically becomes kind of bad, because you summon something, you either draw with Chimera, which isn't the best thing every time, or you summon monsters that don't do actually anything.
Right. Then we played. I guess I'll put Crossout here because it only makes more sense. So we played 3 Crossout and Crow and Ash. So this was my idea to play Crow as well. I thought that when I played on Dueling Book the last 2 weeks, I only got Crowed all the time. Crow on Branded in red and Ash on Branded Fusion are the 2 hand traps that really hurt the most. I feel like Bell, people were not really playing it anymore just because Lost is a card, and if you already have Branded Fusion, I mean, honestly, for me personally, I mostly search Branded in red if I already have Branded Fusion, just because if you have a play that lets you play around Ash a bit more, like you're gonna go for that. But in general, I think people are a bit scared of Lost being on the field in general, and also if you set a second Branded in red, the Bell also becomes worse. So Crow only makes sense, and then Ash, yeah. And I think we expected after the ban list, because this is obviously one of the first tournaments after the new ban list, so we had to change a few things, even for the Despia deck. Even though it didn't get hit, it still changed a bit for the deck, because you're obviously going to expect a lot more Despia being in the tournament, and people are going to over prepare for the deck. So yeah, I mean, we didn't change. We wanted to play Despia in the first place, also before the ban list, and I think it was correct to just say, okay, we're just going to play the best deck anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, Despia is just the strongest deck, so you just play it and you just play cards that out the cards that people are like overly siding versus you, or yeah. So Crossroad, for me personally, was really nice all event. Like
It was pretty good. Yeah.
yeah, in the mirror match, it's just insane. Like if you draw it, I think I'll just put it here because it only makes sense as well. We also played 3 Allure. So the thing is, what I personally saw a lot was that people were either playing Allure or either playing Crossroad. But I think if you put both in the deck, it becomes incredibly, like you just have such an advantage in the mirror match just because you draw into Crossroad with Allure, and it just becomes incredibly, it becomes the card that wins you the game on the spot.
Also, knowing you have something like Allure plus Tragedy or Allure plus Crossout, it basically feels like you're FTKing your opponent anyways. Like, it doesn't really matter what they do.
Yeah. And also, because a few days before the event, I had a build that didn't play the Allure at all. Because I was like, I'd rather want to play Ash, just stop the Brandon Fusion, and that's usually very, very good. But I don't know, man. Allure is just... It's so good. Yeah, you kind of have to play it, especially in the mirror match. 1 Mercuria.
Nothing to say.
Yeah, nothing to say. 1 Snow. I think people were playing Ecclesia in the beginning. Me as well. I was a big fan of Ecclesia. I actually played 3 at some point, but I don't know. Snow, it just helps you survive. Flo also mentioned this. It just helps you survive in certain matchups, and yeah. Then for the last cards, we played 3 Branded in Red. So as mentioned with Shrouded Dragon, this becomes really, really good. And 3 Super Poly.
Nothing to say.
For obvious reasons. I mean, this card is broken, and 1 Lost and 1 Called by the Grave, because this card is
Busted.
nuts if you draw it. Then for the extra deck, I mean, this is really standard. Just 3 Albion, 2 Lebellion, 2 Mirror Jade, 2 Chimera, 2 Masquerade. Like all of those come up.
You can think about cutting the
maybe,
Rebellion,
exactly.
But you don't really have something better to put in, and also sometimes it just comes up if you have to play like a matchup that is kind of grindy, and you can't do that much damage. You better have the second one, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just like it just because there aren't really other cards that are better than this in the deck in general. So, 1 Dragon's Pele for obvious reasons. 1 Kratis. So, a couple days before the event, we found out that one of the best boards you can actually make in the mirror match, and you can maybe go in first blindly now that you know a lot of people are on Despia, is just making, instead of Masquerade and Mirror Jade, you just put Queritis with Mirror Jade, and you have Aluba in the grave. So if they super poly your board, which will happen a lot of times, they will go for Dragon's Tepelia with the Queritis and the Mirror Jade, and then you can use the Aluber in the grave as Chainlink 2 to negate their Dragon's Tepelia, and use this as Chainlink 1, summon out Fallen of Albus, and then go for Mirror Jade by fusion summoning their Dragon's Tepelia away. So this was an interaction that I think was really nice. In one match it particularly came up for me where it was just so awkward for them to play 1 Curides, and if you're not super comfortable with the deck, I think this can put you in a lot of weird scenarios, because 1 Masquerade is bad anyway. Like 1 Masquerade with a Mirror Jade doesn't really do anything. So how was this card for you? Did you?
It was fine.
Yeah,
did what it should do.
Yeah.
Nothing more to say.
Then 1 Glory Dragon. I mean, it's just one of the cards that special summons Fallen of Albus. You obviously have a lot of targets. I mean, personally, I played the Titanic Light as well, but that was a different card for you, right?
I played Starving Venom.
Yeah, so I think the theory was the same behind the 2 cards, more or less. We wanted to have an out versus the Arrival at Ignister, which has like 5,000 attack and you just have to get over it, depending on how many materials they use. This gains attack. You can get this up to 5,000 if you use Chimera and Shrouded Dragon in the graveyard with Albion, and then push it with Ad Libitum on the field. Gets to 5k, and Starving Venom obviously just targets the Arrival Ignister, and
it doesn't really target, it just gains attack equal to the monster, like to a monster that your opponent has.
Right.
It doesn't interact with the Ignister.
Attack value of the monster. Yeah, obviously. And then this searches Mercuria also sometimes, so that's pretty cool. Side deck was by far the most difficult thing. I think we tried to figure this out for 3 days, and yeah, it was pretty difficult. And honestly, like I said, there are not many cards that you can side out realistically. Yeah. Also, maybe you have to say that for the Austrian Nationals here, you expect a certain type of matchup most of the time. So a lot of random decks, a lot of people from locals come here from Vienna, and Yeah, so you just want to be prepared for all the random stuff, especially just because we put crossout in the main. We were really prepared for the mirror match going in game 1 because we felt like you need an unfair advantage in that matchup. Otherwise, you're just gonna. It just depends on luck and everything. So you just want to get that out of the way. But then you have to side a lot of cards for the weird matchups, quote unquote. So that's why we put 3 Nibiru in the main in the side deck. This is so good. I don't know. This was insane. Like versus, in theory, this is so good versus Sword Soul, of course, which is one of the better decks in the format. If you have big balls, you can also side this versus Despia. I didn't do it. Did you do it?
No. I played against the Predator.
Personally, I didn't have the balls, but I guess if people end on the double masquerade boards, which not everyone has figured out yet how to do it, but yeah. Against that could be really good, but then you have Hero, you have Ignister, you have Salamangreat, you have Dragon Link, and all of those decks which you can face. So this was really good. We also played 3. There can be only one. This was mainly versus Fluanderees, but also versus
Sword Soul,
Hero, Dragon Link, Salamangreat, Ignister. The same decks.
Every monotype deck in the format.
Exactly.
You could think of.
And also the thing is that we cut Zombie World and Necro Banshee from the side deck because we felt people are respecting the Despia deck way too much right now, and Flunder players are probably going to be scared of Zombie World, so less people are going to play the Flunder deck, so then you can just put it out entirely, and you need all the side deck cards for other matchups. I ended up playing 2 Flunder, and I won both because of there can be only one, so this card was actually insane versus them. So,
Never had it.
Yeah. 2 Diberia, and I guess you played 2. We're gonna get to that later, but I played 2 Diberia. 2 because I feel like if you play the mirror match and you usually the game plan is to win the first game because you have an unfair advantage, then you don't really need the D-barrier going first, but you mainly need it for crossout if they D-barrier you. Yeah, that's a bigger problem, right? Because you can't play if they D-barrier you, so you just have to side 1 for crossout. And then the more or less third D-barrier for me personally was the branded banishment, branded banishment. I only cited this because I was scared of crossout, but we didn't put it in the main because we felt like it didn't do enough. Like, this is basically sort of a branded in red with, in certain scenarios, this can be a lot better, where you can summon back your Aluber, fuse with their monsters, and then trigger the Aluber effect, for example. But in general, you don't really need this card for the main deck, I feel like. Did you miss it ever, or?
I missed it sometimes, but never really resolved it even game 2 or 3 because the games were so one-sided that probably either you push through the board or you are dead anyway.
Yeah, I see. I mean, for me, this came up one time and it was only crossout, and and that game I won. So I guess that was okay. And then we played comedy. We both played comedy, right? Versus Eldritch and stuff. I played 2 Twin Twister. In hindsight, this was a bit too little of an amount versus the trap decks, because I ended up playing 2 Eldritch and 2 Flunder, so I guess that was a bit more than I expected. I expected more Salamangreat, maybe Drytron and Pendulum were actually decks I was kind of scared of, because we didn't play any entraps in the main deck, and only bad, you could say a bad side deck card in Nibiru versus those particular decks. So I actually played 3 Droplet in the side deck, and I don't know, for me this was okay. I didn't play Drytron nor any other stupid combo deck in the format, but I sided this versus Flunder and it was okay. So, I don't know, you played, instead of the 3 Droplet, I think you played a third Twin Twister, a third D-Barrier, and
the Red Reboot. Because Flo and I were super scared of getting like D-Barriered and exiled in the mirror. So we also sided it in when we were going second in the mirror match, just to make sure that we can push through and not get D-Barried.
Yeah, right.
Didn't happen.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that we both played the same decklist and we both were managed to perform reasonably alright, so that was pretty cool. So I guess that's the deck, and this is the first time I'm doing a deck profile like this on the channel. It's pretty funny, and I will see you in the next ones.
Bye.